can sail without a sailor?
Depends. Depends on the tide, isn't it? So a ship can obviously go by itself, or if you have an engine, a human will do it. Back in the day, you had ships and a wheel, and obviously went. But it depends on the tide, isn't it?
Right.
Obviously, a human needs to build the ship. But yeah.
I get what you're trying to say. So you're saying to an extent, but if complications occur, then there has to be a sailor involved that can maneuver around those
of course.
waves. So similarly, if a ship cannot sail without a sailor, a classroom cannot function without a teacher, a shop cannot function without a shopkeeper, our analogy is that similarly this world cannot operate without an operator, especially with the immense amount of complexity, the design that you see. It rationally indicates, according to the age-old principle of cause and effect, that every effect has to have a cause. We use cause and effect when it comes to science. We use cause and effect when it comes to history, to geography, when it comes to solving crimes, when it comes to our everyday life. Similarly, this concept of cause and effect is applied even, we would argue, to a macro level as well. So when you bear this in mind and you realize that there is no such thing on this planet or in our universe that is an effect that came about without a cause, you want to jump in? Yeah. So that's one of the evidences, but obviously I don't want it to be like a lecture. I don't mind you jumping in.
No, you're right about that. But what I'm trying to say is, with science, obviously we observe planets forming naturally. We know the process. The answer is we don't know how things like the materials and stuff come to be. But don't you think eventually, as humans involved, understanding this better, we'll get the answers to it?
So
even like how the universe was created, one day we will get the answer.
So here's the thing:
surely.
when you look into the fields that I mentioned,
Yeah.
if we look at geography, yeah, we didn't see South America and Africa as one continent, yeah. However, we know through inference that once upon a time they were together based upon its effect. Evolution. No one has seen Darwinian or neo-Darwinian evolution take place.
It takes millions of years.
Exactly. So the data is analyzed through, again, inference. No one saw Big Bang take place. However, the data that we look at, we make an inference, and that inference is that if the universe is expanding and we reverse that process, that it goes to one point, and from that point, the universe may have emerged. That's the best theory that we have so far.
Yeah.
So all of these things that you're mentioning, they are based upon inference. We haven't seen them take place. It's the data, and the data can be interpreted in many different ways. They have been interpreted in many different ways, and they continue to do so. Science, as you've admitted, is not something set in stone.
Not yet.
It is something that is helpful to us, it's useful to us, but it is not the answer, and science does not claim to give us metaphysical answers. I'll give you an example. Evolution, Big Bang. They don't claim to tell us the creator. They are mechanisms. Yeah? They tell us how something happens. We say, we grant you aspects of evolution, Big Bang, no problem. We have no issue with that. The argument is not there. The argument is in a different realm, which is who created those mechanisms? Where did those mechanisms come from? Evolution, Big Bang, arithmetic, gravity, fantastic, brilliant. Where did they come from?
I agree.
Yeah. How did they come? And we say that, and the simple analogy is you look at a car, the Ford car, yeah? If you know how a Ford car works, it does not exclude the creator. Just because you know the pistons and the pressure and you know the steering wheel and you know the petrol and you know all of this functions, it doesn't now mean that Henry Ford, who created it, no longer exists. It just means that we know how it works, and we are one step closer to finding out who created the car based upon the design, because certain designers, they create things in such a way that they leave a signature, as it were.
Well, what I'm trying to say is, would you concede Obviously we don't know everything. We can't discover everything yet, but eventually we will get answers. Maybe after we're all dead, in 1,000 years' time, those answers might be right. This is how it forms naturally. This is what happened. Blah blah blah. You can see that's a possibility. We can get answers because
Answers from where?
science, from understanding the universe,
What is science?
is learning about the natural world.
Natural world.
Yeah,
And remember, God is supernatural.
but we don't know if God's real. That's the issue.
That's the thing now.
Could I add on to what you're saying? Is that right? I have a question. You know, when it comes to, because I completely agree, science can't make a claim on, you know.
Let me just answer this point, yeah?
go
Just
for it.
remember what
Go
you're
for it,
saying,
go
though,
for it.
yeah? Because this might inform what you're about to say.
Sure.
Science, by definition, like you've just admitted, deals with the physical,
Yeah.
deals with the natural. It doesn't deal with the supernatural.
We don't know if that exists. That's the issue.
No, but here's the thing. A assumption of science is something called methodological naturalism, which means that if something is non-physical, it is simply rejected by the door. I'll give you an example. Imagine if you are entering a room and there's a sign at the entrance that says, don't wear anything red. So anything red, you have to take off before you enter that room. Now everybody's entered that room and they are doing science and having all of these discussions. Red comes up. Somebody says, oh, there's no red. We can't see red. We haven't experienced red. We can't, experiment with red. Therefore, it does not exist. Now this is flawed. Why? Because right from the get-go, you have excluded red from the conversation. So the assumption of methodological naturalism is that you exclude anything that is metaphysical. So what we're saying is that anybody who uses science to discover the metaphysical, we're saying that you've shot yourself in the foot by excluding the metaphysical through the methodology from the get-go. If science includes the metaphysical, then that's up for grabs. But it's like saying we're not going to discuss God. Okay, we've got to exclude God, and then when if God is excluded, then we say, hey, there is no God. You see?
Well, we don't know if God exists. That's the issue.
So with science, we didn't know that an electron could be separated. We didn't know that there was space-time continuum. We didn't know that there was dark matter, dark energy. But we did not cut off our limbs and say that we're not going to accept something that fulfills the criteria of dark matter or dark energy. We didn't say that. Do you see? So if at the beginning science says this assumption is that we're only going to take the physical, then we're saying that you have already excluded that from the criteria to begin with. If you include the supernatural or the metaphysical in your criteria, then fantastic, we can both have a discussion about that. But because it doesn't exist within the assumptions of science, therefore it's not fair to use science as the yardstick. Did that?
Yeah. What I was going to ask was I agree with a lot of things you're saying. I mean, when it comes to, obviously, I believe we're talking about here, everything has it can't be an infinite regression, and so there must be some sort of starting point, right? So, one of the things I'm interested in is, do you see that Allah pushed the first domino, and from then everything is a result of the previous domino? Because if we're talking about the creation of the universe, obviously, where science is completely, they don't know, right? They don't know, because you can't measure something non-physical with a physical measuring stick, and it'd be arrogant.
I've got you were saying. I thought you maybe wanted to say something to him. With you, there's a side discussion that I don't know if he's going to bring up. If he brings it up, then I'll answer both of you in one go.
Sure.
If not, then I'll answer you separately. Yeah,
please, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Also, can I say I appreciate your mode of discussion, because I know a lot of people here screaming and stuff.
No
so
problem,
It's
no
nice
problem.
it's nice to actually have a conversation.
No, thank you,
One
bro.
more question before I go. So about Islam, I know there's a lot of miracles. The moon was split in half. He flew to heaven on an animal with
Yeah.
accent, and he spoke to an ant or something.
Not an ant, but yeah, he has spoken to non-physical things.
Yeah, do you have any evidence for that? Because I did a bit of research from NASA, whether you believe them or not, they said there's no evidence the moon was split. You can say God did it, so God put it back as normal. flying to heaven on an animal. For me, I find it hard to believe. Like, if somebody was here now, I can't imagine an animal and somebody just flying away.
But you
know what
find
I
it
mean?
you find it hard to believe because you don't accept a God yet. So this whole conversation of miracles and what then follows on. No, that's
I
our
didn't even
one.
notice.
Here.
Yeah.
So all of that is predicated on if there's a God or not, and that's why our conversation is central on can we prove and what the criteria is for us to prove if there's a God or not.
Yeah.
So far you've used the criteria of science, and I've shown you that science itself is not an adequate enough criteria because of the assumptions in place.
Yeah.
So one assumption that I gave you is, I don't want to use technical terms, but it is simply that you only take the physical into consideration, and that's called methodological naturalism. There is something else called underdetermination, yeah, and the assumption of underdetermination, which means that you have a set amount of data. Now that data can be interpreted using and leading to many different conclusions. That data does not solely conclude that only neo-Darwinian evolution is the only answer. You have neo-Lamarckian evolution, you've got natural genetic engineering, you've got all sorts of, just like you've got the tree of life, you have something called the bushel of life. Yeah?
I mean, we're early on.
And you mentioned panspermia. Panspermia is
still a theory.
yeah, it's a
I know,
theory.
yeah.
And there's, it's not taken seriously in the realms of science. The theory that is actually taken seriously is that the first self-replicating DNA, which is an organic material, came from inorganic material. That's like me saying that a rock produced a rat. Yeah, it's illogical. And that's where scientists have to and they get us theists to grant them the first miracle. This is a miracle. From non-matter to matter.
Yeah.
Science simply does not have an answer
I
to
agree.
this.
Right now, today,
Yeah.
that's what we can say. But 1,000 years from now, I'm sure the understanding is going to be much better. That's what I'm saying.
But
And
here's
again,
But here's the
like,
thing that
I'll just say one more thing. I need to go in a minute. But I do have a Quran in my bedroom. I am going to read it. I'm open to everything. But what I say is, humans are arrogant, in my opinion. All of us are. We think we know the answer to reality. For all we know, we all could be wrong. It could be a natural thing, and
No, but
we need to learn, involve.
don't confuse two things though.
But there's too many religions. There's been over 10,000 religions, 4,000 gods.
You,
humans are.
you're asking very good questions, yeah?
One more thing.
Yeah.
So I'll give you an example of how stupid humans are. So you know Thor, the god, how he was created. So thousands of years ago, humans saw thunder. And how's this happened? Oh, it must be Thor, the god. That's how it's created. But we can explain how thunder happens now, the process of it, naturally. So
But we still believe in a God though.
we
That's
don't
the
know if
difference.
God's real.
We know
It's a belief.
His
Right.
claim isn't about
We could be wrong.
God creating different forms of, natural elements. The claim is that there is a God that precedes all of that. You know what I mean? Because obviously the most.
you're making a category mistake. Everything that you've mentioned, the clouds forming, it raining, thunder happening, evolution, Big Bang, these all are in the category of mechanism. Mechanism does not explain why. And this is something you have to understand, bro. Science, by definition, will not, whether it's 10 years, 100 years, 1,000 years, science cannot and will not answer moral questions. You cannot put morality under a microscope. You cannot decide if something is right or wrong. Science cannot measure dreams. You've had a dream, you open up the mind. So that's why this whole conversation of a mind and a brain distinction is something which is ongoing. Consciousness and non-consciousness is something that's ongoing. Why? Because of methodological naturalism. That science only takes on those things that are based upon the physical. And that's what's holding science back. I'll give you an example. There are many things that science takes blindly, but it cannot prove.
I agree.
For
Not
example,
everything.
mathematics. Mathematics cannot be put under a microscope. There cannot be repeat experiments done. It is not something physical, yet science accepts it. The logical method is not something, again, that can be put underneath a microscope, that is measured. Yeah, so there are, amongst other things as well, testimony can't be put underneath a microscope,
I agree.
can't be repeated. Evolution, Big Bang, same with that.
It's a theory at the moment.
It's a theory, but
there's
it's
a lot of evidence still. There's certain
but
things that
all of that
missing.
evidence can only be made into a theory based upon inference.
Yeah.
You infer that, and this is something in science called abduction, the inference to the best explanation. They're looking at the data and they are concluding the best inference, the best explanation is evolution. That does not mean that that's what we have today, that we will stick with. It will continue changing. But the question,
It will change, yeah.
it will change. But here's the
better or
question.
worse?
But here's the question. The philosophical bedrock is something that even science relies upon. That's why I don't know if you know
Can't
that.
be dating or something like that. innit?
Yeah, so the science originally was called the philosophy of science. That's why that's the bedrock of science. It relies upon certain axiomatic things. So we have to rely on philosophy. Now, if I was to ask you, you're dependent, right? He's dependent, I'm dependent, the mic is dependent, everything is dependent. If we put everything that is dependent into a set and we label that dependent things, everything that is dependent, mathematically I put into a set now, yeah? Whatever theory we have, blah, 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 blah. Now that set of dependent things, is that dependent on something dependent or independent?
Independent.
Could be both.
If it's
independent,
Listen, if it's both, it's a contradiction. Because you're saying a thing is dependent and independent at the same time.
And if it's dependent on something
Well-
that's dependent, what's that dependent on? You know what I mean?
yeah, I get your point.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I struggle with, that we don't know the answers. And the logical thing, there must be a creator. That's logical. But for me, looking around the world, I'm not convinced yet. Obviously, there's a lot to learn from me, obviously, with Islam, Christianity, which I will. But I do need to go now. But
Because you answered a few questions, I didn't want to leave you hanging. Give me a rough time how much you can push it to, because I want you to answer some of your questions.
already, I was going to be back at 3 o'clock.
You could give me 3 more minutes? Okay, so you mentioned there being so many different religions, yeah? And so many different religions have occurred in the past. Now, you know as well as I know, Big Bang Theory is not the only theory.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know as well as I know, evolution is not the only theory. You know as well as I know, gravity is not the only theory, the explanation of that theory. Yeah, even our understanding of what a species is, what space is. Yeah, there's so many different theories. Leibniz differed with Newton. Yeah, there was difference of opinion amongst them. Even till today, there is differences of opinion. So my point to you is this: 1 + 1 = 2, 1 + 1 = 3, 1 + 1 = a potato, 1 + 1 = the microphone. Now, I've given you 4 or 5 different options. Just because I've given you 5 different options doesn't mean you're going to scratch your head, go, wow, there's so many different options here, mate. Yeah? Because there's so many different options, therefore, we will exclude the one different option. Oh, yeah, I wouldn't look back because then we have to blur your face, isn't it? Okay, good. So here's now the thing. When you go to the shop, now I've given you a technical example. You go to the shop. I don't know about you, but when I go Superdrug, I see like 15 different types of shampoos.
Yeah.
When I'm on Netflix, there's like 15 different options of shows that I can be watching. I don't sit there paralyzed, because of choice, and I sit there, I go, you know what? Let me unsubscribe. But you do watch Netflix. You do have shampoo. Yeah, so that means you have made a choice in the end. And how have you made that choice? You've made it based upon the information that you have. And that's what we're asking you to do. And that's what you're doing now. Had you had more time,
I'm going to learn.
I can prove to you, bro, that Islam, with all due respect to the other faiths, I'm sorry, but it is head and shoulders
I
above
agree.
the others.
At one point, the Quran is
He said it's
by
fine.
far probably the best written book, the Quran. The miracles, the scientific facts. It's probably the perfect book.
Bro, it's the only book from the ancient
is-
religions that's perfectly preserved.
It is, and if there was a religion, it would be Islam. But I'll have a look into it.
And I'll be here hopefully next week, bro, if you want to have a follow-on
Well,
convo.
maybe in a few weeks I'll be back. I'm 10 minutes down the road anyway.
Fantastic, fantastic. I'll take that microphone off you.
Yeah.
You said your name is Shiv.
Shiv.
Shiv. Take it easy and don't get shivved, yeah? It's London. Take it easy.
Robert, can I ask you a few questions?
Yeah,
if
yeah.
that's
You
all right?
Muslim?
Oh, no, I'm not.
Put this on there.
So first
You're
of
Christian?
All, no.
Atheist? Agnostic?
No, okay, I'll tell you. So I mean, when I actually almost converted to Islam.
Okay.
Almost when I was like 14, 15. You know, Zakir Naik.
Mhm.
Yeah. He always